Didn't Bob Dylan at one point feel that Springsteen was copying him, or he was unhappy about that? I
Oh,
think.
no, absolutely. He hated him. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
how he feels now, but in those 70s and even in the 80s, he thought that Bruce had sort of ripped off his whole persona.
Okay, so Paul Rappaport, Gliders Over Hollywood. This comes out at the end of this month. It is an absolutely wonderful read, and I highly recommend it. And I will put a purchasing link just below this video, so do check it out. Paul, my first
What
question is a fairly obvious one, and that is why and why now? What's prompted you to write this book?
I think I always thought about trying to capture these magical times. And it's not really a now thing because this book took six years to write. I'd written a blog for 10 years. I was doing indie promotion and I was writing a rock blog. And I found my writer's voice in writing this blog. I'm a good storyteller, but writing's different. That's a craft, right? You have to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So after those 10 years, I went, no, I think I could really write it now. But I had always thought about it because this 2 decades, right? You're talking about 70s, 80s and 90s, and into the 90s is such a magical time. First of all, there's a renaissance of music, of all kinds of music, of all genres. But I'm a rock guy, so we're talking rock. So there's a renaissance in rock. The accent is on art, right? It's not even a real business. When I first joined the business, the music business is CBS owned Columbia Records. They had CBS Broadcasting. That was their uh, sort of big deal, and the record business was a side business.
Yeah.
But now, all of a sudden, all this rock stuff starts to emerge, and they're going, "Whoa, wait a minute, we're in a whole new business." So you got to. So the people talk about the 80s. First of all, the 70s was like one giant party.
Yeah.
It only became a real business around 1975 when the record company went, "Wow, wait a minute. We have to, we have to hone in expenses. This is a real business now." But it was so wonderfully wacky and so outrageous, where the money came second. Okay, it's like the art is the most important thing. We want the artists to make the best records they can in the best recording studios with the best producers, and then we're going to get the best promotion people and the best press people and the best graphic designers, and everything's going to be the best. But there's no rules, right? How to do this. So it's like the Wild West. I just thought, number one, I don't want anybody to forget how beautiful this was. Because once people like me are gone, it's gone, right? Unless you write a book or tell somebody about it. And two, I thought, well, there's a lot of younger people that might really appreciate, what could be. Look, hey, this could happen again in a different way. If you want to make the accent art again and not money, somewhere along the line, the music business became the money business. But in those
The
years,
music industry just seems to just not be there anymore. And Gene
it's
Simmons, of course, is famous. He said rock is dead because there's no infrastructure or industry anymore. Is there a
mm,
sense of sadness in your voice about that?
hmm. I think I'm sad, but I don't know what's going to be the future. I remember once having a discussion with David Gilmour. We were talking about fidelity.
Mhm.
He and I were both very disappointed in the CD, especially, I'm a guitar player, but he's David Gilmour, so he's on another level, right? But we were both talking about, oh, you can't hear the overtones and all this stuff. And I was really beside myself. I thought we're really losing something special, which we have, by the way. So if anybody listens to a vinyl record on a good sound system, it sounds so much different and so much better than digital stuff. But he said, you know what, Rap? My nickname's Rap because my last name's Rappaport. Right? He said, you know what, Rap? Because I wouldn't really fret about it. He says, because you want to know why? He says, we're here in this small moment of time. He goes, this is only now. And you and I are in the middle of it and we're freaking out. He goes, but it's only now. And we're here for such a short amount of time on the planet. Who knows what the future is going to be? And you and I have to hope that it'll be better. Somebody will go, wait, this wasn't a good idea, this digital stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, so I am sad about that, but I'll tell you what I'm happy about.
Hmm.
I used to wonder about, is this music going to stand the test of time, or this stuff that matters to me so much? You know, you're talking about this music is as great as Bach and Beethoven. It's just rock, right?
Yeah.
But the Renaissance is great. And I used to go, geez, is anybody gonna, remember some of these great albums, or how does it get passed on? Okay. I have a friend of mine who's got a kid, and here, I don't know if they have it in England, but here we have a School of Rock. And in my town, we have Bach to Rock.
Okay.
He says, look, my kid's in a recital. Will you come and see my kid? I said, yes. 12-year-old kids. Okay. I go, it's 12-year-old kids on stage. Guy's voice hasn't even changed yet, right? Okay, we're going to start by playing Burn by Deep Purple. I'm like, how do you even know Burn by Deep Purple? That's an album track. That's not even a hit. That's not even Hush. That's not even Smoke on the Water. Like, okay, 12-year-olds, okay? Barry, 12-year-olds. Guitar player steps up. And they are playing Burn furiously. And I'm looking at 12-year-olds going, yeah. And I was like, they're gonna know about it. But I think that also if the streaming services like Spotify, the numbers are starting to come down for pop. Not that the pop music is bad, it's just different. It's a different thing, right? It's not soulful. It's made by five producers and whatever. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And guess what numbers are coming up? Numbers for a band called Fleetwood Mac. Kids want to, who are these Fleetwood Mac people? Who is this Tom Petty guy? Well, whoa, wait a minute. Exile on Main Street. Hold on. I have I'm into a lot of kinds of fun things. So I happen to be taking Latin dance lessons, right? So my dance coach is 35 years old. She's a doll. Her husband, they dance professionally, Latin, right? Over the top stuff. He's from Ukraine. His name's Misha.
Okay.
Talking to him one day, and he likes to talk to me because he's a rocker. He's learned how to play a Strat. He goes, "The Rolling Stones changed my life." I said, Misha, I don't get that. So the Rolling Stones changed my life, but I'm 17 years old, right when that happens. Like that hits me very hard, right?
Yeah.
I said, but how does the Rolling Stones change a 35-year-old guy from the Ukraine's life? And of course, he was into him before he was 35. And he looked at me and he goes, Paul, he goes, you kidding me? That voice, the guitars, how could it not? So what does that tell us? The music today is as good as the day it was recorded. And here's a guy, maybe he's 25 when the Rolling Stones changed his life. I don't know, but he's a kid from the Ukraine. Doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
music's that good. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy about that. Yeah, the business went away. And maybe it could only be so magical for so long because because everything was make it the best. Fun was part of our job description, as you read in the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. If you played for Bill Graham, famous, rock promoter in San Francisco, and you went backstage, he created these grand backstage thank you, almost movie sets for whoever played for him as a thank you. Come and play, you played for me. Pink Floyd played there. He built an English pub. You walked into an English pub and you sat down and had a beer and a steak and kidney pie. And it was real. You were like, it was like you were in a movie. How much do you think that cost, Barry? Was he worried about that today? It was, oh, don't leave any money on the table with your deals. Don't leave any money on the table. The heck with the money on the table. It was like, hey, I'm doing this for you. And guess what it cost to build an English pub
Yeah.
backstage?
Yeah.
So the accent was different. Like we got credit for being characters. Be big, be bold, do something that no one's ever done before. The record company's going to give you money to do it. So those glorious times, somebody had to write about it. I mean, I got the call. So thank you very much up there, whoever sent it to me. I wrote it. It's coming out. I'm thrilled
Well, I'm
to
glad
be
you did
able
write
to.
about it because it is an absolute cracking read. I was interested you touched upon your dealings with Randy California. I'm just interested in your opinion, how influential was Spirit as a band, and do you think they were cheated by Led Zeppelin?
You know, who knows? Because the way music works is everyone's listening to everybody else's music, right? And sometimes, look, there's a story about Paul McCartney walking around for weeks playing, yesterday, I think there was a song, right, saying, who wrote this? Like he's playing these chords already. And everybody's saying, no, we've not heard this before. And he said, no, I know this. This is in my mind. This is a hit. Who
Yeah.
played this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took him like a few weeks to realize that he'd written it because in his mind he'd heard this music. And we all, as musicians, we all hear music. Okay. Who look the first time I heard Led Zeppelin, I went, "Oh, this is the blues, only not as good as like Freddie King and B.B. King." Right? And Jimmy, I love Jimmy Page, right? But I'm hearing the call and response, right, between him, right, and Plant. But it's supposed to be that the singer sings the phrase and the guitar player, tries to play something underneath to mimic that or to tell you a story on the guitar. So Led Zeppelin did it the other way around. So Page is playing, da da da, and Plant's going da da. I'm going, well, that's cheating. Like that's not the way it's supposed to be. But it doesn't matter because in the end of the day, if you're making something beautiful, where does it come from? Who knows? That's those phrases could have come to Jimmy Page as easily. Maybe he heard it in the ether. Maybe he's on tour with Spirit and he hears it. But come on, Jimmy Page, do you think he has to copy anybody? Let's get real. I mean, do you think Jimmy Page has to steal something from somebody? This guy, first of all, he's a great session musician. Then he does Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
People don't give him credit for, I mean, okay, he's a great guitar player. What about all the songs? What about all the arrangements? What about the production?
Yeah.
It's all Jimmy Page.
Mm.
So I don't think if that happened, it happened innocently. Page doesn't have to steal anything for anybody. He's an innovator. And who knows, and it might have sifted through his head and maybe he heard it from Randy, but you know, again, it's not like he has to do that. So
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, Spirit was a wonderful band because they were very progressive and they weren't snapped to a grid, right? These guys, these songs, for anybody who's a Spirit fan who likes this kind of music, right? I mean, who writes a song called Fresh Garbage? I mean, come on, right? But it's amazing, right? Fresh garbage, da 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 da. Da. Beautiful band, pure. All these guys are as musicians. Marketing, not a clue. Don't care. We're up in Topanga Canyon. We're making music. Here's our record. In those days, there were a lot of artists like that. It was like, we just want to make the music and the marketing. Hey, rap, you guys go do that stuff. We don't care. I'm turning my record. And as you read in the book, Randy and I became friends. And it was fabulous because I used to go up to the house and watch the guys play. And as you read the book, and he comes in, he gives me the new Spirit record. I'm not the guy he has to give it to. He's supposed to give it to his Epic was the sister label to Columbia.
Yeah.
He's given it to me because we're friends and we're from this hippie generation. So I'm cool. So he knows he can trust me, right? So I have to take him by the hand and go, look, Randy, we have to give this to your record company. And I have this fabulous conversation with him, right? And he's telling me he wants to play baseball for the Topanga Canyon baseball team because he loves baseball.
Uh-huh.
He says, I'm thinking of taking the summer off. We're going to play a baseball for the Topanga Canyon baseball team. And I'm like, Randy, this is a big record. Your record company's going to want to put this out, and you need a tour, right? They're going to expect a big Spirit tour in the summer behind this album. Like, where's your priorities, right? And he looks at me and he goes, Paul, exactly. It's baseball season. Okay, what does that tell you about the artist brain there, right? It's like, yeah, I made a record. It's great. Let him put it out. I got to go play baseball. He's not thinking, oh, how much money am I going to make? Or, what's my marketing scheme? And a lot of artists from that era are like that. And a
Yeah.
lot of artists from that era don't even know what their managers do. You'd be shocked at the superstars. What I'd say, do you know what, do you have any, like their managers working hard. Like, do you have any idea what your manager does for you? No. All we know is the money keeps coming in. Like, well, you might want to know this guy's, just so you know, this guy's killing himself, for you, but they came from that place, from that late 60s. You read Ronnie Wood's book, he talks about just being in a van with Rod driving around. They didn't care about the money. They just wanted a place to play. So there's an innocent, beautiful, innocent thing about that, in that late 60s. But there is Rockstar hasn't, it's not a job yet. It hasn't been invented. These guys invented it, right? Eric Clapton didn't say, oh, there's a job rock star. He just wanted to be a guitar virtuoso and he wanted to be the best guitar player he could. And he thought, well, maybe I can make a living doing this if I do it my way. I mean, it's already been done by Freddie King and these guys, but maybe I can make a living, if I get good. There is no rock star until these guys come along. And then, then it's a vocation and people are watching MTV going, oh, I could do that. I'll just learn a few chords and look good and, be a rock star. But these guys are players, right? They're players first. And Randy's probably the most innocent person I ever met in my life, most innocent human being,
Oh,
and
wow.
one of the most beautiful human beings I ever met in my life.
Wow. How instrumental do you think you were in the success of Blue Oyster Cult?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, although if anybody's, I need to say this in a way that I don't want it to sound like over egotistical, or I would never say that if it wasn't for me, a band wouldn't happen. I believe if music's really good, it's gonna get there. Maybe I help it go faster. Maybe it doesn't become as big. I know me. I know how I approach promotion. I'm very passionate. I really want to make things happen. It's all about the music to me. Like I know we have to sell records and CDs, but to me, I'm just like I hear this music and go, okay, I need to tell the world about this music. That's exactly what my job is. Like you got to hear this. But for certain bands, you are a cog in a bigger wheel. But for certain bands, you're the guy or the girl or the woman who actually makes things happen. There are a few instances in my career. One of them is Blue Oyster Cult. One is the Psychedelic Furs. One is Alice in Chains. One is Men at Work, Midnight Oil. There's a few that I know if I wasn't sitting in that chair, and I say this out of pride. I don't mean to come off as like some, you know, big shot guy. It's just the passion and a lot of the stuff I would get involved with early, nobody else would hear, right? Because imagine getting the first Blue Oyster Cult record in the early 70s. Nobody's doing anything like that. So it
Mm.
takes a certain ear to even hear it. So I know for those guys, in fact, I just saw Joe Bouchard last night. I was at a show where he guested. He's the original bass player for BOC.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with this record. I took it to a friend of mine in Long Beach, California, which is just outside of Los Angeles. He was able to play more experimental music because he didn't have the pressure of the ratings of the bigger rock stations, right? So he could experiment if he heard something. So he was a guitar player.
Yeah.
So, we get this album, and shortly after, we get an EP of the band live. And the EP is insane. And I go to McCoy and I go, listen to this guy, Buck Dharma. This guy's a rock god. Like, listen to this guitar. He's got out of his mind. The lyrics are over the top. Cities on Flame with rock and roll. Transmaniacon, MC. Um, he liked it. He starts playing the music. Okay, so now I have a start. Somebody likes the Blue Oyster Cult. I am telling you, nobody in New York City is making this a priority. Nobody called me and said, "Hey, Rap, go make the Blue Oyster Cult happen." It was just out of love for the music. So, but they allowed you to do stuff then. There were priorities, but they were big on, hey, if you can make something happen with one of these albums, because they're releasing a lot of records at once, right? Please do it. He likes it. Now we're starting to sell records. So I'm thinking, okay, next thing, we need him to come to play. So I could have put him on an opening act with another band or called a promoter, but instead I went to the radio station and I said it was a mom and pa radio station. It was a husband and wife that owned it, and I said, look, you guys are making this band happen. Why don't you promote a show and you make the money? I mean, we'll pay the band, but as a promoter, you make the money. You deserve it. You're the one that's breaking the band, right? And so they said, okay, great. So I thought, well, they're gonna, they'll get a club, maybe a theater. Okay. They rent out the Long Beach Arena. Okay. This is a 12,000 seater. It's a Blue
Yeah.
Oyster Cult's a brand new band. But what happens? Now they have to sell tickets. Oh, now if you listen to KNAC, it's Blue Oyster Cult all the time because
Yeah.
they want to sell tickets. So now this becomes this big amplifier promoting Blue Oyster Cult, making them, you know, very big, stars in this area. I like to do creative things. So I had a guy design like a bat signal with their logo, that upside down question mark. So
Mm.
so we could run it on the side of the Long Beach Arena, like 50 feet by 50 feet, make this the biggest, sort of debut band ever. And we knew we weren't going to sell out, but I think we probably sold about 8,000 tickets to that show.
Yeah.
As long as they were going to fly the band in, I said, geez, I might as well do one in San Diego. That's 2 hours south. Had a friend there, mirrored the same thing. Played the music, had a rented an arena, Golden Hall, sold out 2 shows. In that weekend, the Blue Oyster Cult was established
Hmm.
in many ways because, first of all, they'd never played an arena size. I mean, you're talking about a band in a club. I don't even know if they'd even played at a theater yet, but they could hold a stage. You could see it. They were arena size act. So I watched it happen. 8,000 kids go nuts. You go down in San Diego, same thing happens, right? So now, within a weekend and all this airplay in both Long Beach and San Diego, now the bigger rock stations in LA are forced to play the music because it's happening. And so, they'll tell you this. It's hard for me to say this, but if you meet those guys, they'll actually tell you that I'm like responsible for their career. I mean, it's very sweet to hear it. It's hard for me to say it. I can't believe it wouldn't have happened without me, but I know I was that thing because promoters across the country went, "Oh my God, there's a new arena act. We got to start booking these guys." And then they jump started out of clubs. They immediately were playing theaters, and then it went on from there. And they're wonderful people. They've been friends for life.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, there's some of those. You're the person, and that one, that's the truth of how that happened. So.
Yeah. What was it like seeing Springsteen in the early 70s? And is he right to say that he felt unsupported by the Columbia label?
He was unsupported by the higher ups.
Okay.
And I wished he would have made this more clear in his book. And in my book, I made it clear. There were higher ups that didn't understand it. You have to realize that Columbia Records, the big money is made on pop singles. So the rock music sort of takes a second tier until about 1975, when rock radio becomes so big. Now we're selling records without top 40. I
Yeah.
mean, now Bruce Springsteen can sell a million records without a hit single, and so can 10 years after, and so can you know whoever. So, but in the beginning, my job was to make things happen on rock radio, and then as it built, it would cross over.
Mhm.
So Journey is an album rock band for a long time before they have hit singles. I work with those guys, and then they cross over. Same with Bruce. But the higher ups were so busy dealing with Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand and these big pop sort of acts. They leave the rock stuff to us, so we had to promote from the inside, believe it or not, to heads of marketing, heads of A&R. You know, I'll tell you a fabulous story that's not in my book. One of my really good friends is a guy named Peter Philbin. He signed the Psychedelic Furs to America. They were signed in England first, and he signed the Bangles, right?
Mhm.
Big Springsteen supporter in the beginning. There were four of us. There was myself, a guy named Michael Pilot, who was my boss, who ran the album department, Peter Philbin, who had just switched from the press department to A&R, and R, and a guy named his nickname was Brahma.
Mhm.
Um, and his name's lost in my head for a second. But so there's four of us who want to tell the world because we had seen Bruce live. So you can get the record. When I got, greetings from Asbury Park, I was like, hey, this is really cool. This guy's Dylan S., but he's not copying Bob, but I really like this guy. Well, when you see Bruce live, for anybody that's ever seen Bruce live, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
This guy's the hardest working man in show business. I mean, you just leave with a smile plastered across your face for a month.
Mhm.
So we'd seen this. But Bruce, like most artists, is just broke for a lot of years. He'd hang out in Peter's office and just kind of sleep on his couch. And the head of the label, Walter Ryetnikoff, pulled Philbin aside and he goes, Peter, you got just can you? Because Bruce looked like a vagrant. I mean, he's got muscle shirts and jeans. That's all he owns. He
Yeah.
goes, Peter, it's just not a good look. Can you get this guy out of here? And Peter's going, Walter, I don't think you understand what this guy is. And look, there's a true story. There was a drop notice. They were going to drop Bruce because his first two albums didn't sell what they thought. And they were going to drop him. There's a drop notice on the head of A&R's desk. But the head of A&R's desk is a mess, right? You can't find anything. My boss, Mike Pilot, before Born to Run came out, had sent a tape out of a song that Bruce had done that wasn't recorded, but it was great.
Yeah.
And it started to get airplay. And now all of a sudden there was a buzz, like big airplay. And all of a sudden there was a buzz, and somebody called Mickey Eisner, who's the head of A&R. They, did you sign that drop notice yet? He goes, no, I can't find it. It's buried up here. And I said, well, don't sign it, because I think this is going to happen. That's a true story. That's how close Bruce Springsteen came to being dropped.
Wow.
But we were like soldiers for him, right? You strap on your armor and hold your shield up and pull your sword out and go tell the world about Bruce Springsteen. Um, and that's, the way a lot of things happened at a record label at that time for bands who weren't priorities. You know, that's just the way things happen. It's a beautiful thing. And little by little, it would happen. I had a really tough time on the West Coast where I started for Columbia because Bruce is from the East Coast and there's a lot of East Coast imagery.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, the guy's a poet. The guy's great. I
Yeah.
would give people records. Go to rock stations on the West Coast. What do you think of this? Well, I don't know. He's thinking about giant. Singing about giant Exxon signs. We don't have Exxon here. That's an East Coast thing. I'm like, let me get this straight. You're listening to the same record I'm listening to, right? And you're telling me that all you can come away with is that he's writing about giant Exxon signs. I mean, that's. So it took me a while on the West Coast to get it, but the secret was you just bring people to see Bruce live.
Yeah.
And people kind of getting burnt on the hype because they were hearing this thing and they were going, oh, this guy's overhyped. And then he hit Time and Newsweek, two big magazines here in the States, at the same week. And then when people went, okay, we've had enough. This guy's overhyped. And so then it became harder. But
Yeah.
then I would just go to these huge rock stations and get their program director and say, don't tell me about this guy Springsteen anymore. So I can tell you what, I'm going to bring you to see a concert. If at the end of the concert you don't get it, you don't like it, I will never talk to you about Bruce Springsteen again. I promise. But you got to do me a favor. You got to go to the show. All right. One of the biggest, hardest was a guy in Seattle. Okay, big rock station. So I take this guy in Seattle. So he goes to a Bruce Springsteen concert again. Like Bruce is on the rise, right? This must have been maybe on the Darkness tour. I mean, he's becoming the Elvis Presley of our times. I mean, it's nuts, right? This band and Clarence Clemens and the E Street Band and all this stuff. They explode in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
He's there. He sees it. He's leaving the concert with me. His name was Bo. I said, Bo, come on, we're all going to go get coffee. He's shaking. He's visible. No, no, no. I have to go put the music on the radio station now. I haven't been playing this. I said, no, Bo, you can put it on in the morning. Like, have a cup of coffee. He goes, no, no, you don't understand. I'm KISW. I'm the Rock of Seattle. I need to look like I know what I'm doing. I need to go put all those Bruce Springsteen records on now, and I got to go on air, and I got to talk about this. And blah, blah, blah. He was like out of his mind. So, he saw it. He got religion. But that was my job for him and also for Billy Joel, who every time he had a hit was a ballad.
Yeah.
So the rock guys are going, no, he's a balladeer. I'm like, no, he's a rocker. They're going, no, he's not. I'm going, just come here. Again, I would take cities of people to see Billy Joel. Same kind of thing, because when you see somebody live, it's just so much different. So no, it started like that, and a lot of us had to fight. I had to fight for money from my own label for live broadcasts for Bruce Springsteen because he was so good live. That's how we broke and put a live broadcast on FM radio. People are going, whoa. So I remember I wrote about in my book, the head of marketing, head of promotions there. He's
Yeah.
trying to tell me about his budgets. I'm trying to say, I need money for live broadcasts. He goes, yeah, but I have these budgets, right? I lost it. I'm jumping up and down on a couch screaming. This is rock and roll history. Do you understand? This is rock and roll history. I don't care where you get the money from. Effing steal it. You know, I was so passionate. He goes, "Oh, here's the money," right? So, but we had to fight for him until he gets to the place, and then kaboom,
Yeah.
and everybody looks at you like, "Yep, you were right about that one."
Yeah.
So
I mean, you mentioned Bruce Springsteen's Dylan-esque sort of influences. Didn't Bob Dylan at one point feel that Springsteen was copying him, or he was unhappy about that? I
oh,
think.
no, absolutely, he hated him. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
how he feels now, but in those 70s and even in the 80s, he thought that Bruce had sort of ripped off his whole persona because
Wow.
Bruce is a poet. Bob's a poet. Bruce has got message songs. Bob's has got message songs. If you listen to Greetings, I mean, some of those songs are very Dylan-esque,
Yeah.
and I would talk to Bob and go, Bob, look, you should be proud. Yes, there's part of him that's emulating what you do because you're such an influence on him, but he's not, copying you per se. But one of my favorite stories is Bob walked into my office and he knew I was a big part of Bruce's career, right? So
Yeah.
I had a big Bruce Springsteen poster and Bob sees it and he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "Is that guy still driving that stolen car?" Only Bob could come up with that line. Is that guy still driving that stolen car? I'm
Yeah.
like, Bob, you got to give it a rest. I said, look, what about you and Woody Guthrie? What did Woody Guthrie think of you? Right? I mean, it's like there's Woody Guthrie, and then that he begets Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan begets Bruce Springsteen. But one of the things that they said about Bruce when he came out was, oh, it's the new Bob Dylan. As far as Bob Dylan was concerned, there only needed to be one, right? So he didn't need the next new Bob Dylan. So he absolutely hated Bruce. And I mean, maybe down the line he figured it out. What is he? He's Bob freaking Dylan. I would tell him, what do you like, Bob? You're Bob Dylan. Like, you know how many people want to be Bob Dylan? Everybody. So it doesn't matter. Even the guy's copying you. Who cares if he sells a bunch of records and he becomes the biggest Bruce ever? He'll never be you. He'll never write as good as he can write. Is he going to write Blown in the Wind? Is he going to write Times They Are Changing? Is he going to write Subterranean Homesick Blues? I don't think so, right? And I love Bruce Springsteen's work, but
Yeah.
for me, Dylan's like the Shakespeare of our time. It's like, come on. So, but look, all these artists are very neurotic and very, uh, they're insecure because it's like like Barry, you never know, right? You don't know when are they going to stop liking you.
Yeah.
Every time you put a record out, you don't know when people go on to the next thing. So they all wonder, oh my God, you know, the Rolling Stones, how many times have they thought, man, we better get all the money now because we don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah.
Right? And this story is repeated in their career a
Yeah.
bunch of times. Like, when's it going to be over? We don't know. So those guys, the money mattered a lot to them because they just thought, oh my God, we don't know when it's going to end.
It's interesting. You mentioned Bob Dylan being a poet of our times. I mean, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan as well, but also absolutely love Paul Simon. How do you rate Paul Simon as a songwriter?
Say again?
So I'm also a big fan of
Yes.
Paul Simon. How do you rate Paul Simon as a songwriter?
Oh, one of the great American songwriters.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Um, know something interesting? Right. Okay. Here's a Barry Robinson exclusive. Okay. So D- Dylan's upset, is mad at Bruce, and Paul is upset because he's not getting the respect that Bob Dylan's getting.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a real thing, right? Like, well, can they talk about Bob, but why don't they talk about me like Bob? And you have to say to Paul Simon, Paul, you're the greatest Paul Simon we have.
Mm.
You write the most beautiful song. These records are gorgeous. This apples and oranges. It's like Bob is Bob. Okay, look, the guy changed the culture for crying out loud. Bob doesn't even like that mantle, but Bob Dylan's music was so powerful. He changed a culture. He changed my life, and many kids like my life listening to songs like Times They Are Changing. The youth movement's happening. Things are happening. The war against Vietnam, the war in Vietnam. Okay, Bob is there at this time, right? So I was like, Paul, look, sometimes the times make the man, but Bob, you're Paul Simon.
Yeah.
You're like one of the great American songwriters, but they're all competitive. They're like,
Yeah.
well, people just talk to me like they see Bob, and Bob doesn't want people talking about Bruce like Bob. And you're looking at all of them like going, come on, guys, give me a break. You're killing me, you know.
What was the difference in the way Springsteen and Dylan worked? Because Springsteen was really obsessive, I think, but I get the impression that Bob Dylan was kind of a one take sort of guy.
Yes, it's exactly the truth. Bob's music is almost more about the journey of making the music than it is about the perfection, right? He's it's all about the song, okay? He'll go in the studio and go, okay, here it is, take one, whatever. If he hears it, if he got it, he doesn't care if Michael Bloomfield didn't play the greatest guitar part. He doesn't care if the drums got a rim shot. It doesn't matter to him if the song is captured. And a lot of musicians, he would drive him nuts because Bloomfield said, "No, I can play this way better. We just did this a couple times." But as far as Bob was concerned, it's a finished product. He paints like Picasso. He
Yeah.
once asked me, he goes, "Look at," he goes, "Rap, you got to tell me." He's like, "I don't get it. Okay, I'm Bob Dylan. Tell me how Fleetwood Mac sells 6 million records. And I can, no matter what I do, I only sell 1 million records, which is what Bruce sold before he had a hit song, right? This was our plateau, I guess, for rock music on rock stations with an intellectual bent,
Yeah.
right? So I'm saying, well, Bob, first of all, your music's really, poetry. So it's not, it's not commercial, in a way that something else is. Look, Bob, Fleetwood Mac goes into a studio. They have crafted songs for the radio,
Yeah.
right? Bob could care less. Bob's writing 12-minute, sad-eyed lady alone. It's like Picasso. Bob just paints, right? I
Yeah.
said, so, but Bob, they go in and then they do overdubs. And they spend 6 months in a studio crafting, editing, overdubbing, da 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 da. And then these hit singles, these hit songs come out. I go, you go into a dentist's office in Santa Monica, pull up a sound truck, roll it Bob, and in 2 weeks, your record comes out. But it's great. It's a great Bob Dylan record, right? It's like you don't want to be them. You'll never be them anyway because I know you. You can't do that. It's not your thing. But he kept thinking like, but I'm Bob Dylan. Don't you think maybe I'd sell 1,500,000 on the next one, right? But he's very, very fast. Um, he's really, I mean, it's about the song. I think, I don't know I don't know how he writes. I don't know how many things just flow out of him and then I think things flow out of him and then he crafts it, right?
Yeah.
But Bruce is the opposite. Bruce is the overthinker. Okay. Clarence used to tell me, hey, Rap, what? Bruce has to write 4 songs so he can get one. That's what Clarence raps. Really, he writes. That's how it happens. It's just a different way to get there.
Yeah.
Like Bruce is, we almost every word has got to be like, no, I'm trying to convey this, right? Like, how do I convey this? Um, he's very cerebral that way. He's also driven the work ethic. I've never seen a work ethic in my life like Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Bob sometimes doesn't even rehearse. Bob will just plug in and play. I mean, he's notorious. His band has to know at any time that a song can change keys,
Yeah.
or any song can be called, or now we're going to do this song a different way. Okay, we're going to do this, but do it reggae. I mean, you really got to be on it because he's very much. It's how he feels at the moment. Like he wants to be authentic. This is how I'm feeling now, right? And now, so this is what you're going to get. If you go see Bob Dylan, don't go with expectations. You want to go see Picasso paint? Go watch Bob,
Yeah.
because on any given night it could be different. He's not a hit machine. He's not gonna not playing my hits like a jukebox. I'm not here to do that. That's not Bob.
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce Springsteen, on the other hand, you talk about rehearsals. Okay, most bands do a sound check. What is it? Half an hour, 20 minutes. How do we sound? Great. Off the stage. Okay, here's Bruce Springsteen in an arena. Okay, the guy's already an arena act. Doesn't matter. Band's on stage. He's got a 100-foot cord before they had, remote control for electric guitar. He's got a 100-foot cord going from his amp down the center aisle to the soundboard. Bruce Springsteen is rehearsing his band at a sound check, playing his parts at the soundboard and twisting the knobs on the soundboard to get the sound he wants in concert for his band.
Yeah.
Okay. And that sound check and that rehearsal could be 2 hours easy. I saw one for 3 hours. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Okay. Band goes away, takes a break, comes out. He's famous for 4-hour shows.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they come out, they do 4 hours, right? A million encores. Afterwards, you want to see Bruce? 40-minute towel down. He comes out. He'll see everybody. Doesn't rush anybody. You want to see Bruce? Stand online because he wants to talk to you, with you. It's not going to be rushed. Okay. And until the last person is left. Okay. Maybe he goes back to the hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 at the latest. Goes to sleep, gets up, does the same exact thing every day, city by city by city. There
Yeah.
is he is who he is, not by accident. He studied frontman. He studied James Brown. He studied Mick Jagger. This is not, people think these guys just smoke a fat one and go out and play. No, 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 no. Not the professionals, not the people that have a work ethic. They don't. Keith
Yeah.
Richards rehearses the Stones like crazy. How do you think they're so great?
Yeah.
How can they still be doing this? I mean, it's a work ethic, to be great and to remain great and to remain this good and bring this kind of a show, to people. So it's two different. They're both poets, but they come at it at a different way.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'll tell you one great story that's not on the record. Bob went into a studio once, and the engineer is working on the drum sound. And he's working on, he's getting the kick. Bob comes, he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm working on the drum sound, man. You're gonna have the greatest drum sound. I mean, this kick's gonna sound like this. And Bob's going, "Whoa, is that gonna help the song?" Like what, it's like the guy's so he's so into the drum sound, and Bob's saying, "Dude, it's like, not that I don't want a good drum sound, but don't lose the plot, okay, of why we're here,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
So just a different, just a, but let's just say this about Bob Dylan. Let's be clear. There are songwriters and there are songwriters, and Bruce Springsteen's a great songwriter, and Paul Simon's a great songwriter. But you tell me who, at such a late age in their life, could release two amazing records like Time Out of Mind and Rough and Rowdy Ways that late in your life. You come up with that. I love Paul Simon. I love Bruce. They, this is not. Nobody can do that. One guy can do it. Only one guy, Bob Dylan. Nobody.
Yeah.
They can't. Or they haven't yet. Put it that way.
Sure. Sure. I've got to turn to Pink Floyd because I've got so many Pink Floyd fans that subscribe to my channel.
Uh-huh.
You were working with Roger Waters at the time when there was all that horrible court case going on between him and
Yes.
Pink Floyd. Um, First of all, what's Waters like to work with? Because I've heard he can be a bit tricky. Secondly, how did all that legal stuff affect him, in your opinion?
Well, I guess tricky is a good word. I mean, Roger's got a very strong personality.
Hmm.
Um, and so, you know, when he does things or when he says things, it's almost like, okay, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know. So, hang on. I'm in heaven. I'm having a cup of Thai food tea, talking to a wonderful Englishman in
Oh,
England.
there you go.
So,
Because it looks like a lovely day there as well. What time
yeah,
is it where you are?
yes, it's starting to be spring here. But Roger is he's a smart guy. I mean, he'll listen. He's stubborn. Well, Gilmore's stubborn, right? I mean, but Roger's stubborn in a different way. He's just a different person, right? Um, but he'll listen. As you read my book, and I tell about what happened on the radio chaos, and there was going to be a problem, and I had to address it, and I had to go talk to him about it, and he listened. He'll listen, but um he's just a different guy. I mean, he's just kind of got like an acerbic personality. It's just who he is. I personally, one of my years ago when I was just driving around doing some promotion, and he said, "You know what?" He goes, "My dad died in the war, and I never had a dad." And he said, "It left a big hole inside of me, right?" And he said, "And you know what?" He said, "You know what, Rap?" He goes, "All of these songs and the big production and all of this stuff." He goes, "You want to know what that is? That's me trying to fill up this hole." And my knees not. When I heard that, I was, whoa, that's pretty heavy stuff. And he said, and he said, and no matter how much I try to fill it, I can't fill the hole up. And it was very emotional for me to hear something like that, and so I think that Rogers, forget the lawsuits and stuff, being right, you know, ouch. So, if you're a kid that grew up with an ouch like that, maybe you're not so happy-go-lucky, right?
Mm.
Like you hear it in lyrics. He doesn't write happy songs, but they're powerful,
Yeah.
right? And I think at that time, look, it was tough because Roger did not think they would continue without him because this was after the wall and after the final cut, and Roger had become such a bigger part of the band. He had just sort of taken over for the wall, and so he said he was going to leave. He thought he needed to go on his own, fair enough. And then David and Nick wanted to remain as Pink Floyd. He didn't think they would do that.
Yeah.
So they said, "Well, can we have the name?" And he said, "Sure." As in a million years, he was so used to, being bigger than life, he didn't think they would do that. So he was kind of in shock when they wanted to move on. And then it was very tough because then it turned into a feud. And then it was, the court thing this way, that way. And I was sort of right in the middle of it. And I'd worked with both of them, right? And admittedly, it's easier, working with David and Nick. They're just different people, right? It's just the way it is. But they like one in each ear, like Roger Reed going, "What are they doing? What are they doing?" Right? And Nick and David are going, "What is he doing?" And I'm like, "Look, guys, I'm professional, and I love all you guys, and I've loved your music since even before I was in the record business, right? So I'm going to work for all of you, like 110%. Pink Floyd's in here, okay? So Roger, I'm going to do everything I can for you, and David and Nick are going to do everything I can for you, and Richard Wright, who was back in the band then. But I'm not. Whatever you tell me stays in here. I'm not telling you what the other guy's doing. You fight it out. That's your business. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be here for you and here for Roger. And I was able to do that, and they had to respect that. And I was able to, and I think I was successful working with both of them, but it was sad to see all of that. They're still feuding to this day, which I think's hysterical. It's like, guys, nobody cares anymore. It's like, stop. Okay, we're all older. Like, stop. Yeah, please, right? And now the big, now it's and now it's the hip thing to pile on, Roger now, and I'm not going to do that. And guess what? He and I, some politics are the same. Some, I have issues with him for a lot of his thoughts about different things,
Yeah.
but I just like to concentrate on the music. Hey, you know what? It's a free country. Say what you want to say.
Mm.
But I just like to keep it to music. But I am not gonna pile on Roger Waters. He finds himself in awkward positions
Yeah.
sometimes. Let's
Yeah.
just say that.
Yeah.
And back in the day, he would have people like me or his manager, Steve O'Rourke, would say, "Roger, just don't go down this road. It's not going to help you," and kind of pull him back. But he doesn't have that now. So he's out on his own. Um, but look, you know what? One of my favorite quotes, Bruce Springsteen: "Trust the art, not the artist."
Mhm.
Because the art is pure, but the artists are flawed because we're only human beings. You know, so so I don't want to be one of those people. I respect his art. I think he's written some of the greatest songs. He's some of the greatest records ever. Same for David and Nick. They went on. and Pink Floyd sounded a little different, but you know what? It was kind of a breath of fresh air.
Mhm.
It was like, okay, this is a different Pink Floyd, still Pink Floyd, but okay, now it's going to change. It has to change, right?
Yeah.
So, Richard Wright got back in the band. I mean, look, how do you make a Pink Floyd record without Richard Wright? My humble opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
So Richard was back in the band and everything. And so, I was able to do both. Um, in the beginning, I knew all of them. They were always very kind to me. They sort of invited me into their family because I think they knew how much I loved their music. Like I wasn't a suit to them. I just wasn't a record company suit. They knew that their music was deep inside. Um, but hey, like Roger Waters taught me how to play cricket. There was a cricket match between Pink Floyd and they're on EMI and they were on EMI and I think still are in England, and so the EMI guys are all British, and so there's a cricket match and I got invited to learn how to play cricket. I was taught cricket by Roger Waters. He's there with the pads and all this stuff and teaching me everything. So those were fun days. And then after the breakup, I will say though that I actually became really, friends with David and Nick,
Yeah.
because they're really wonderful people. They have big hearts. They're gracious. I mean, I'd go visit Nick and he was collecting, cars. And he said, Rap, come down to the garage, sit in all the cars, take pictures. David was, buying airplanes. I mean, these guys made a lot of money.
Yeah.
David was buying airplanes. He had an airport to put the planes in, okay? But he's not like, oh, come and see my planes. They're not like that. It's more like, you want to go flying tomorrow? They're like big kids. They're like, yeah, let's go flying. So, I would just like anybody who watches this to know what beautiful people they are, what big hearts they have. I mean,
Yeah.
David always gives so much money to charity, it would make your head spin. You
Mhm.
know, how's this? Oh, we want to thank you for all these years of helping us. Oh, we're going to give you a Christmas present for thanking you. Come and play in our band for a song on stage. What? Who does that? Like, what? Yeah, come, at a rehearsal, right? No, no, proper gig. Come and play guitar. You're going to be in Pink Floyd for a song, right? And I'm saying, you mean like really play? Like, I don't want to, I'm not a poser. And Gilmore's like, no, that's the gift. You get it? You're a guitar player. You're going to play, right? Barry, who does that? Come on. Have you ever heard of that in your life? And I go backstage and Nick and Dave, I mean, they're being great to me. Nick's going, I played Run Like Hell. London Arena in 1989 was the encore. So
I was at that
I
gig,
learned.
I think.
Pardon?
I was actually at that gig.
Okay, well, maybe you saw me, Barry. How was
Maybe I did know it
I?
was Docklands Arena. I don't think it's there anymore. I think
No,
it's closed down.
I don't know. It was called London Arena. It was also called Docklands
That's it.
Arena.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And I got to play a real part. There's a third guitar player named Scott Page who doubled on sax, and I played the part he plays
hmm
in that song. And I'm backstage and Nick Mason's going, oh, Rap, don't be nervous. Like, we don't even know the song that well ourselves. Like, don't worry about it. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, Nick. And David's going, no, look, I want you to have, because I said, David, I'll just play chords behind you, right? No, no, I want you to have fun. I said, you mean like play some lead? He goes, yeah, because there's a breakdown, in Run Like Hell where there's a few lead bits.
yeah, yeah,
He goes, yeah, yeah. He says, but you have to sound like Pink Floyd. I was like, David, I worked on one song for 3 months. I can sound like Pink Floyd. So imagine me, I'm plugged into the greatest sound system I've ever plugged into in my life, right? David's rig is like from here to here, from the floor to the ceiling. I plug it, I sound just like David Gilmour. Same echo, I've got a telly, just he's got Telecaster. And so, and I'm sort of can't believe this thrill of a lifetime for me. I want to play well because not for the crowd, because if I, you know, make, hit a clam or something, the crowd's not going to know. And we're all in this giant echo loop, but I need to play well for the band. These guys are top-notch musicians. I need to hold my own. I don't want them to think I'm a poser. I want to, and, but they had so much fun watching me because they're on their 200th show already. Gilmore's running back, looking at me, smiling, yelling in my ear, "Let him have it, drill him!" I'm going, David, shut up! You're gonna mess me up, right? And sure enough, there came the lead part. And he and I were trading licks, and I'm thinking to myself, "What a thrill! Like, are you kidding me? Am I doing this? Is this happening? I'm trading licks with David Gilmour in the London Arena, like in front of 15,000 kids." But it takes a big heart to do that. I mean, I could have messed up. I mean, they got me on stage. I could have goofed it. but that's how they are. Like, people should know that they're wonderful people.
Yeah. That's
So
a lovely positive note to end on. I'd like to just plug your book once more. Paul Rappaport, Gliders over Hollywood, Airships, Airplay, and the Art of Rock Promotion. Wonderful read, as you can imagine from this interview. I strongly urge you to get a copy. There was a purchasing link just below this video. Paul, thank you so much for regaling us with these wonderful stories, and even more than were actually in this book.
yes, yes, you got some exclusive. Look, I want to thank you very much for having me. I worked so hard to try to make something special. So I really thank you for having me on your show.
Uh,
So
my
thank you.
pleasure. The pleasure is all mine.